Okay, if somebody has a house in Raleigh that wants to sell it and they want to sell it as commercial, should they rezone it, or how do they actually sell that land as commercial?
So that's an excellent question. They could rezone it, and if they got like blanket commercial, that'd be highly valuable. But Raleigh planning is not in the position to give blanket commercial, and unless everything around you is blanket commercial. So we have something that's called spot zoning, and we have something that we call domino zoning. And it's not Domino's the pizza place, it's Domino's like if one falls, the next falls, or whatever. So certainly if you had a piece of property right here and on either side of you was residential, the likelihood of you getting any kind of commercial zoning is pretty slim. But if you have one that's commercial next to you and residential on the other side, they may allow you to be commercial or something in between, like office and institutional. And so it's not absolutely necessary to get the rezoning if that's the highest and best. One of the things that Raleigh and a lot of the other municipalities like to do is they like to do what's called special use permits or conditional use permits. And they'll say, look, we're not going to give you a blanket commercial, but you want to do a vet. We'd love to have a veterinarian hospital here. So we'll give you a conditional use permit. You can do a veterinarian hospital if it's 2,500 square feet and you got 32 parking spaces. We'll let this be a veterinarian hospital.
So you would take the person's house and list it as commercial, and then the commercial buyer, well, you list it as...
We would utilize the commercial sites, but we would call it, in the commercial world, we would call it transitional land or transitional property. We'd say commercial potential. And people are going to investigate that, and like, you're in the middle of a subdivision, it has no commercial potential. We look foolish. But you're on a major, you're on Strickland Road, and there's a shopping center right next to you or whatever. Then, even though this is a brick ranch on 5 acres, it's highly likely that the planning department would allow some higher and better use.
So you would sell their property as transitional on like sites like LoopNet, and then people would get a lot more money for it than if they sold it.
But it's going to have the entitlements. So I can't say, hey, this would be a great place. On LoopNet, I can't go on LoopNet and say, hey, this would be a great place for an animal hospital, and it's not zoned for an animal hospital. The buyer gives us a contract, makes it conditional on rezoning, and rezoning right now is not, in some instances rezoning could take 6, 9, even 12 months, depending on the rezoning that you want. And so so you have to have a pay-to-play contract. We've talked about that before, but yeah, transitional land, it might be the highest and best use, but the seller needs to be cooperating with the buyer to get it to that higher use of the higher value. Because certainly, if we look at Raleigh, 1,600 square foot ranch on 5 acres, I don't know, maybe that's worth $400,000, but 5 acres of commercial land could be $2 million in the Raleigh area. So, it's definitely a huge difference. So we can go with an inflated price, even though it's not zoned for that, if it has the potential. And one of the things that a good agent needs to do, an experienced commercial agent needs to do, is they need to have discussions with the planning department. What are you looking for? What's the potential of this property? If I did this, and it's a tug and pull kind of game. They don't want to tell a whole lot, but you got to get a whole lot. And if you're getting red flags, that'll never be commercial area. You're barking up the wrong tree. Mrs. Johnson lives there. She won't allow it. If it's no chance, it's no chance. But they're like, no, this is in our future plan. We see this being commercial. Then it has some opportunity.